This is always one of my favorite episodes of the year, not because it gets a ton of views or strictly from an entertainment standpoint, but I know if you clicked on this video, you are truly an NFL diehard, a draft sicko, if you will, to sit here and listen to someone break down offensive line play for an hour, and that's exactly what we're going to do here today. I have watched 46 offensive linemen for the upcoming NFL draft, and I'm going to talk about 25 of them here today. With that, I do want to remind you, if you want my full write-ups, my rankings, grades, everything on every offensive lineman that I've watched in this draft, every player I've watched in this draft, check out my Patreon. You'll get access to my full draft guide. You'll get access to my studs and duds player review series and other draft content as well. I'll be doing 7-round mock drafts for all 8 divisions in the week leading up to the draft, and you'll support my channel in the process. But with that, we are here to talk about the hog mollies, the offensive line. And this is a pretty good offensive line class, if I'm being honest. I would say it's above average overall, certainly at tackle. It's just a very good offensive tackle class. Interior offensive line, it's probably closer to a yearly average. But we're going to break it all down. The tackles, the guards, the tackles that could play guards, the tackles and guards that might be able to play some center. We'll talk about the centers as well. So we're going to get into all of it here today. Please do hit that like button as we get started and make sure you're subscribed because we're going to be getting through all of the position rankings for this draft in the coming weeks. But let's begin with the offensive tackles, and we're going to do a countdown here starting with my number 8 offensive tackle. And then once we get through my top 8, I'm going to show you some tiers and hint at some deeper names as well. But for my number 8 offensive tackle, I have here probably my hottest take in today's video, one of my biggest my guys in this entire draft at any position, someone that is like 240th on the consensus board right now, but absolutely stood out to me, and that is Carver Willis out of Washington. Nobody is talking about Carver Willis, but like I said, I've watched 46 offensive linemen for this draft, and he was one of those guys deep into the 30s, and I'm watching him up against all these undrafted graded players and 6th and 7th round graded players, and he just absolutely stands out as a ball player compared to these guys. And it's not because of his measurables, right? He's 6'5", just under 305 pounds. He's got 32.5-inch arms. He's not going to blow you away with his RAS testing. He tested just fine. He ran a 5'11", 40-yard dash, just a 26.5-inch vertical jump. He did do the shuttle. He's got one of the better recorded shuttles in this draft class at a 4.71, just 23 bench press reps, yet about half these guys are skipping the bench entirely. That's important to remember. But when you watch him play, Carver Willis, he's really athletic, man, and his game speed is so much better than a lot of these other guys that are going to have a better RAS score, run better, jump higher, all that kind of stuff. But Carver Willis moves really well in pads. He plays with a really confident, aggressive demeanor in the run game that especially really stands out. This guy flies off the ball. He has, to me, one of the better get-offs in this draft. He gets on top of his block in a hurry, athletically speaking, but knows exactly where he's going. A lot of guys, as you're going through watching 46 offensive linemen, they just don't play with that confidence. You know that you've seen their 40-yard dash and they can get out of a stance and be explosive, but you watch their tape and they can be a little apprehensive and passive, especially when we're talking about the run game, and that is not Carver Willis. He is going to hit you in the mouth 70 times a game, and the reality of this position is you want guys that are willing to do that. And then, look, he's got plenty of play strength for a guy that is going to weigh in a little bit lighter. I see him displacing guys at the line. I see him with strong arms to steer guys out of the way. When he meets linebackers and safeties at the next level, he will clear them out cleanly in the run game. I think he's got athletic light feet as well that show up on his tape, where he will run his feet through contact, stay square to his block, and sustain blocks really well. And all of that is pretty heavily focused on his run blocking, where I do think he's a slightly better run blocker than a pass blocker. But of course, that athleticism is going to translate to his pass protection. I think he's explosive into his pass sets, gets plenty of range in his vertical sets. I see a guy that can certainly live on an island as a tackle. Anytime you're talking about, can he be an NFL tackle? Can he live on an island? You want to see really two things. Does he have the range, the explosiveness into his angle sets to be able to set the edge? And does he have the foot speed to keep running out to the edge or to slant inside and cut off any inside counters? You have to be able to move well out in space to be an NFL tackle. I definitely see that with Carver Willis. And by the way, once I finish Willis, I'm going to take a quick aside to tell you what all of these individual evaluation points on the screen here mean for you, so you can really follow what I'm talking about with some of these terms. But I wanted to get into Carver Willis first. But you will see certainly passable grades there for the range and the feet for him. I think his hands are really good as well. Yes, he's got the shorter arms, so at times that can work against him, but I think you see advanced hand usage from him. He has a nice snatch trap technique to get guys on the ground and end reps entirely. I think where he will likely struggle the most is going to be with his anchor, where he is a little bit lighter. He has those shorter arms, so sometimes guys are going to get into his chest and create that knockback. I think he's well built and has a good enough footwork to do that hop set technique and reset against the bull rush so that he's not just like constantly demolished by NFL bull rushers. But I do think there's probably going to be a cap on his upside and his consistency in pass pro in that sense. We're talking about my number 8 offensive tackle here, right? You're going to be able to find some holes in his game, but I don't think he's just, again, going to be just someone that you tee off against with the bull rush time and time again. More of a guy that you can beat with it. And then I think you can talk a little bit more about kind of his background and why nobody's talking about Carver Willis. Well, he is going to be 24 years old. He's a 5th-year player. He transferred over from Kansas State, where obviously Washington, who's maybe got the best O-line development in the country at the college level. I think they've made a strong case for that over the last few years. But they identified something in him, but he was really not much at Kansas State. So already an under-the-radar guy that doesn't have these crazy traits that are going to pop out to you. But he also suffered a mid-season injury. He had an MCL tear in the middle of the season. I think it was week 7 against Ohio State. You can actually see the last play on that cut-up. A D lineman goes into his knee and it went the wrong direction. He was fortunate enough to be able to return and be back in time to do his testing in the pre-draft process. It looked like a bad injury that was the final play on that Ohio State tape. But he battled back within a 4 to 6 week injury projection on that thing. He came back 5 weeks in, played really well, and then 6 weeks removed from that injury, you watch him in that Wisconsin game there. He allowed a quarter of his season's pressures in that Wisconsin game. And especially when you get into the second half of that game, you can see clearly he's not moving like he does in his other tapes. And after every play, he's kind of, holding his knees, not moving like he once did. And, that I think took a lot of wind out of any sails that he really had building up that draft stock. So the tape is really good, but it was really just in 1 year once he got in that Washington program. And then, that midseason injury was just really poorly timed. So, it's definitely noteworthy, but I think it does give him pretty big sleeper potential in that sense that maybe if he doesn't have that injury, he has this dominant season and is someone that is getting more day 2 buzz in this draft. But that is where I have Carver Willis. This is probably the biggest player that I am pounding the table for. I've got a 2nd round grade on him. I understand I don't need to take him in the 2nd round, but maybe 3rd round I would grab him just in case someone's high enough to take him in the 4th from me. And the other nice thing about Carver Willis is while I think he can play tackle, I think he's got a really balanced, again, athletic build that would absolutely translate as a guard or maybe even a center. I think he has potential 5 position flexibility because of how he's built and how he measured and how he moves. I'm just a huge fan, man, and I'm willing to be wrong about this guy. I understand this is really out of nowhere. This is not going to line up with the consensus board at all, but I saw it with him in so many ways as we just described. So excited to start the video there with someone I'm really excited about seeing how things play out for him at the next level. Now, like I said, I want to take just a minute to just tell you quickly what these different categories on the screen here mean for you. Just, I think people that want to learn more about offensive line play and what you should be looking for with these guys, or maybe just better understand what the hell I'm talking about here. The physical tools side of things, that more speaks for itself. It is worth noting that when I give that final physical tools grade there, that factors in size and arm length, and it's the whole package of the physical measurables of what they're working with. But as far as pass blocking is concerned, range, like I described, that's really about the explosiveness and stride length and your ability to kind of get to that deep set in your angle sets to protect the edge. So that's gonna come from, again, explosiveness out of your stance, and then do you have good enough, fast enough, long enough strides to set that perimeter. Where that differs from the grade on their pass blocking feat is that's more about the actual agility side of things. How well are you at cutting off inside counters? Can you latch and mirror? How well do you kind of protect your inside-outside shoulder against lateral hitting pass rush moves? Hands, more self-explanatory. How good is your hand work? That's going to come down to how precise and accurate your strikes are. Do you have varied hand techniques? The guys that get higher graded hands in pass protection are going to be the guys that reset their hands inside. Do you have bait and switch techniques? Do you break out snap traps? All the different handwork techniques you can use as an O-lineman. And then anchor is very self-explanatory there. How well do you prevent push from the bull rush? And then from a run blocking perspective, get off can be different from your natural acceleration. I think we see that in some guys. Sometimes we don't. Carver Willis would be a guy that, yeah, his 40 time, even the 10-yard split for him wasn't incredible, but you watch him off the tape and it's like that guy gets to his landmarks in an absolute hurry. There's a game speed element to truly getting off the ball in the run game that doesn't always show up in the underwear Olympics, you know? So that's going to be the get off. Drive in the run game is the ability to displace guys off the ball. Your gap, inside zone system types of blocks where you want to create some of that push off the line. It's like a reverse bull rush from a run blocker. And usually that can go hand in hand with get off, where you're kind of converting speed to power as a run blocker. But drive can also just come from sheer strength and leg drive, where maybe you don't fly off the ball necessarily, but you arrive with so much force and you have such strong legs that you are able to pretty quickly move defensive linemen backwards. Sustain is more of a broad term. This comes from technique, it comes from footwork, it comes from hand placement, but it's extremely important. Sustain is going to be the core of your consistency as a run blocker. A lot of guys can get off the ball, knock you back if you're not looking, but they might lean in as a run blocker. They might fall over their skis and end up on the ground or fall off their blocks more. Or you might create that initial shock, but you don't stick your hands. And these guys are able to kind of bounce off your block, work around you, and end up getting to the play. Sustain is, do you hold your block, essentially? Very important for run blocking. And then tenacity, another thing that really matters to me. At the end of the day, you got to come out there, get into a dogfight 60 plus times a game and want to do it. You have to enjoy what you do as an offensive lineman. And frankly, I think there's a lot of college prospects that ended up playing O-line because they're big and they're told that that's what they're supposed to do and they have potential to be this NFL offensive lineman, but they put the pads on and they're not as hungry as some other guys. And it's obviously much more of a truly subjective evaluation there, but I think time and time again, the guys that play with that kind of dickhead mentality is something you really look for. So hopefully that helps as I continue talking about the O-lineman here, and that was worth the quick aside there. Before we do go to my next offensive lineman, I do want to thank the sponsor for today's show, SeatGeek, the #1 ticketing app out there. Guys, baseball season is upon us. SeatGeek is the official partner of the MLB, but we've got basketball and NHL playoffs just around the corner as well. And SeatGeek has got you covered for all of it, even concerts. If you want to go enjoy a nice outdoor show, but SeatGeek has the best user interface. They color code every single seat. So as long as you understand green means good, red means bad, there you go. You know how to use the app. You know how to get the best deal. You get the tickets right there in the app. You don't have to jump through email chains and have this stressful experience as you approach the gate. And right now, if you use code TFG10 at checkout, you will save up to $20 on that next event you want to go to as well. So thank you to SeatGeek for being a great sponsor for the channel and for saving you $20 on that next event you want to go to. But let's go to my next offensive tackle. And this is going to be Caleb Lomu, one of 2 Utah offensive tackles that make the top 8 for me here. Very traitsy left tackle prospect. He is kind of the definition of you fill out your draft board every year, and there's only so many guys that check all of the different boxes that are required for someone to maybe be a franchise tackle for you. You want the height, the length, you want all of the things I talked about with the range and your kick slides, the foot speed to be left on an island. And Caleb Lomu has all of that. He's incredibly athletic. In fact, he ran a 4.99 40-yard dash at 313 pounds, a 32.5-inch vertical jump. And you can just see it in the way that he moves on tape, whether it's when they pulled him or got him out in space on screens or when he's climbing to the second level on a combo block. They just don't make them like Caleb Lomu too often. And the guys that are physically molded like this, they go in the draft, because even if it's like a Caleb Lomu, where I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to get cleaned up, he's still young, he's just 21 years old, his tape was far from perfect. These offensive line coaches know that it's the traits that you can't find, and if you can clean up some of the stuff from a guy that he's not horrible, but has coaching moments on tape and things that he needs to clean up, then you can find a guy that maybe can be a franchise tackle for you, which we know is extremely valuable in the NFL. So I think a lot of the selling point on him is the physical traits, but look, I don't want to make it sound like there's just nothing that he does well. I think there's a lot of stuff in both phases that do play and did play at Utah and should play it in the league. And I think the best thing to call out from a technique standpoint is I think his hands are really solid and workable. And he pairs it with pretty solid arm length. He passes that 33-inch arm length threshold in a year that all these guys are measuring in a little bit shorter with their arms, thanks to a big combine and arm gate this year. But I think the long arms pair with good technique in his hands. He pretty consistently hits his strikes, is accurate with his hands, but you definitely see advanced hand techniques from him as well. He can vary his strikes. He can use bait and switch techniques. He's got a snatch trap technique and pass pro that works really well for him. So at least from a coaching standpoint, it's like, all right, we're talking about a guy that has the requisite length. He gets plenty of explosiveness into his kick slides as well. So he's going to kind of cast that wide arc from the tackle position, and then he's good with his hands. Now, there's a lot more to clean up here, especially with the feet. There's really no reason for him to lose against inside counters as often as he does. He stops his feet and can't do that. So you got to keep him to get him to keep running his feet and recognize those inside counters when they're coming so he can slant and cut those things off. And then the anchor. This is more of a need for some physical growth from him. And I like that he weighed in at 313. I don't know that he played at 313 at Utah. That could be a good sign that he's already starting to bulk up. But if he did play at 313 at Utah, I'm maybe a little bit more concerned because he's just got a lot of room to add to that frame. And he's young. He's 21 years old. But you can definitely see when a good bull rusher lands their hands into his chest, he's got that kind of ugly looking knockback where he's kind of out of control and can only do so much. That's going to come from not just, leg day and bulking up in his legs, but getting in, doing, plyometrics, add some more core strength in there as well so he can absorb some of that before that shockwave goes down to his legs. So that's probably the biggest thing that's going to make or break Caleb Lomu's upside as a tackle, is how well can he handle the bull rush there when he's left on an island. And then I think in terms of the run game, he's close to being a really good run blocker, but it's just inconsistent tape. There's not really a better way to say it other than that. I think some of the stuff with his feet that shows up in pass pro shows up as a run blocker, where he'll arrive, but he stops his feet and kind of struggles to stay square and loses sustain on his blocks. I don't think he's the strongest guy. So in terms of creating displacement at the line consistently, redirecting guys when he does attach, there's little moments of everything with him, but it just hasn't really all come together for him quite yet. I almost wonder if he could have benefited from another year in college, but getting him in the hands of good NFL coaching is honestly probably what's best for him. There's only so many good offensive line coaches to go around. I think they probably have some good ones there at Utah, but it is going to all just kind of leave him as a little bit more of a boom or bust type of prospect. And it certainly leaves you with a guy whose tape is just kind of all over the place a little bit at times, and certainly inconsistent, if nothing else. So I don't know if this makes me lower on Caleb Lomu for him to be my OT7 with a top 50 grade. Honestly, in a draft where there's 6 tackles in this draft that I really like, I think first round's a little bit rich for Caleb Lomu. If we're talking about, okay, New England at 31 wants to consider him, okay, sure, that's pretty damn late in the first round, but I'm much more comfortable with Caleb Lomu. I would just say outside of the top 30 of the draft, just because I think there is a pretty high bust potential with him, but a lot to work with as well, to the point that he could become a legitimate franchise tackle for you. But now let's go to my number 6, offensive tackle, and this is where you can already see what I'm talking about. Like, this is a really good tackle class. My number 6 guy is already someone we're considering in the first round, and that is Caden Proctor, the big man out of Alabama. As of the combine, 6'6.5", 352 pounds. Actually, not the best arm length, about 33.5 inches there. But this is a big man moving, and the biggest selling point, pun unintended there, is just the sheer width and volume of a human that you got to get through or get around in the run game that just inevitably leads to a loosely effective play style from a guy that just has enough technique and awareness at the position. But there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, there's a lot of just unknown with Caden Proctor. And I think with Proctor, you can kind of start with the bad that shows up with him, and it really all centers around his lack of foot speed, and you pair that with the fact that he played, by his listed weight and by all accounts, he played at about 380 pounds at Alabama, and they've done this before. Like, they have had guys just play way bigger than they realistically need to, and we've seen a long list at this point of Alabama offensive tackles that just don't have the foot speed to be left on an island, protect against inside counters, and be consistent and effective tackles, especially at the NFL level. And playing at 380 pounds, I think that's what you saw with Caden Proctor, and it hurt him in both phases. The guy lost to, every other inside counter he faced on tape. A guy could just set wide, and because Caden Proctor's so big, it's so hard, not just with the foot speed, but with the momentum to redirect and stunt back inside against an inside counter. So he has heavy feet, but he also has 380 pounds of himself shooting him backwards in the opposite direction. It's so hard for him to step back inside and cut off those inside counters. And then you pair it with, I think he processed them and reacted to them even slower on top of all of that. So that's what's going to make or break him as a tackle, is now dropping about 30 pounds. We'll see where he lands on his NFL roster. If he plays at about 350 or continues to lose weight, gets down to 340 or whatever. If he, let's say he plays at 340 at 6'6.5", that's 40 pounds lighter than he played at Alabama. If the foot speed's better, it doesn't need to be amazing with his size and his strength. But if it's just better enough that he can match some of these lateral hitting pass rush moves, we can really be in business with him. And it's really good to see him start to drop some of that weight and go in that direction. But this is what you call fog of war in an evaluation. We don't know how he's going to move at 340 pounds. We do know at 352 pounds, he ran a 5.22 40. He had a 32.5-inch vertical jump, a 109-inch broad jump. Like, he is not just big, he is athletic relative to his size, but there's a limit to that. And Alabama pushed that limit to the point that he couldn't really pick up his feet. And it obviously showed up as a pass blocker, but it really hurt his ability to sustain blocks in the run game as well. He would have the initial shock factor as a run blocker, but so often would stop his feet or struggle to keep moving his feet, and guys would peel off of blocks and go and make a play against him, and that just shatters his consistency as an overall run blocker. So to me, he's a clunky mover, but he is an explosive overall athlete that's just kind of literally weighed down by the fact that Alabama basically permitted him to play at 380 pounds, or you could even go as far as saying they asked him to play there. So really, how light can his feet be? What weight does he play at? It's a question mark with his evaluation, but even with that, there's still some good stuff on tape. His hands in pass protection, to me, are really good. I think he's very accurate with his hands. He's got vice grip for hands, so when he does land it, even if his feet aren't moving all that well, he's able to steer his blocker and lock in when everything clicks. He's got a snatch trap technique. For a young guy, he's shown some advanced hand technique in there. So if the feet come along, he's got outstanding potential as a tackle, even if, okay, maybe he's never going to be the most rangy tackle or the fastest footed tackle. If it can just get better, paired with great hands and great play strength, and I think you can have him drop weight and he's still going to be really damn strong, even at 340, 350 pounds. So he's an imperfect prospect for sure, but there's a reason there's a lot of hype and always was a lot of hype around this player. It's just kind of, he's coming out of Alabama with some turbulence, and we got to be able to land this plane correctly. I feel like I found myself about consensus on Caden Proctor, where anywhere from like Detroit at 17 onwards, I'm considering him. I think there's a world where this works out. And I've been pretty damn low on some, especially like J.C. Latham. Like I actually think Caden Proctor is a better prospect than J.C. Latham. I think he wants it a little bit more in the run game than J.C. Latham ever did. And I think he's just at the core of him is a better athlete. It's just at 380 pounds, again, that was just impractical. So we'll see what happens with him. He's not dissimilar from Caleb Lomu, where there's a little bit of a boomer bust element with him. I do want to say with Proctor, though, before we move on to the next player, is even though he's close to 6'7", he's 6'6.5", he does pretty consistently play with good pad level and good leverage, and I can absolutely see his game translating as a guard, and I think that re-elevates his floor. If I'm going to call him a boomer bust tackle, I think pretty strongly of his prospects to be a guard. I'm willing to try and fail him at tackle because of all the foot speed stuff and the change in weight, but I see a guy that he keeps his pads down for a guy that's listed as tall as he is, and I think he could really translate to the inside pretty easily, where his play style would absolutely translate, and you're going to shelter him from the lack of range and the lack of foot speed that he did have at that big weight. So fail him at tackle, play him at guard, that to me, mid to late first round, I'm totally cool with Caden Proctor, and I think that's about the consensus on him as well. So he is a fun prospect, if not a polarizing prospect. But let's go to number 5 for me. One of the highest upside players in this entire draft at any position, and that's Maxi Honachor out of Arizona State. And the selling point, the elevator pitch on him is extremely easy and straightforward. This is a guy that's relatively new to football that simply moves at an elite level relative to how big he is. He's 6'5", almost 6'6", 320 pounds. And his acceleration, foot speed, the way he can kind of glide around and get out of his stance and move at that size, I mean, he moves better than some tight ends do off the ball. It's unbelievable. And the foot speed to stay square and pass protection, all of this shows up in flashes as a run blocker. They literally do not make him like Maxi Hanachor. The prospects of getting to work with this type of athlete is absolutely going to appeal to any offensive line coach in the NFL. We saw what Mike Vrabel was doing in that kind of viral clip of him working with him. Now, the tape is very inconsistent on him, and it's not, he's newer to football, but he is older than some of these other guys. There's a lot of 21-year-olds in this draft. Maxi Hanachor is going to be 23 in his rookie season. And I think from an overall technique standpoint, he's probably further behind than I think I would say any of these 8 guys in this top 8. So you do have a lot of work to do with him. And I think that really starts with his hand usage. The footwork stuff, there's some things I'll talk about, but for the most part, he's so natural with his lower half that things come a little bit easier for him with some stuff to clean up. But I think he can survive. Like, if he just never improved his feet, he could probably survive. He's got to improve his hands to make it in the next level. And it's in both phases. I mean, in pass protection, the strikes come in wide. There's so many times where you want to see him vary his strikes or reset his hands inside or, show us other techniques, whether it's a bait technique or a snatch trap. I did 3 games on a Hanachor. I saw one bait technique on tape where he flashes the hands, pulls him back when the D lineman shows his hands, and then restrikes. And it's like, okay, he's clearly like, he wants to work on it, but he's not super comfortable with it. That's going to be the next step for him, is varying the hand strikes to get him to that next level as a pass blocker especially. But in the run game too, like those strikes come in wide, he falls off blocks. You got to be able to hit your punches and redirect guys and use your hands as a run blocker, and he's not there yet. So can you get that out of him? I don't think it's a coincidence that in the clip with Mike Vrabel, what is he working on? His hands. So I like that the Patriots saw the same thing. They're like, let's get Vrabes in there before he's ever even a Patriot, and let's start working on his hands. Because, man, if this guy's coachable and we can get that stuff up to speed, we're talking about a truly special type of prospect. I mean, there's a short list of NFL tackles that can move like Max Hanachor does. It's Trent Williams. It's, Lane Johnson in his prime. Maybe like Brian O'Neill for the Vikings. That's what we're talking about in terms of a rare athlete here. Now, I mentioned it's not all perfect with his feet either. I think in terms of like mirroring pass rush moves, pretty damn great at it, honestly, in terms of reacting to different rush moves and staying square in pass protection. That's the core of why he was still, serviceable at the college level as a pass blocker. He was far from bad. I'll say that. And he gave David Bailey a run for his money in that matchup. So I don't want to say he like sucks across the board. It's just there's some pretty glaring issues that are going to show up as a problem consistently against NFL competition, and did at times in that matchup against David Bailey. But I think in terms of the technique with his vertical sets, where you want to see him explode out of that stance and really cast that wide arc to protect the edge at tackle, it's just inconsistent. You can see the moments where he really explodes out of it and has long strides to broaden up and cast that arc. But there's a lot of times where he's not quite fully comfortable doing it, and those strides will shorten up. And a lot of this is Arizona State's fault, I think, because they ran a lot of power sets and quick sets where they're not asking him to really have those classic NFL pass sets. And I think those techniques kind of got crossed in his mind a little bit. And sometimes you would see him not quite get enough depth in his vertical set and start chasing a little bit more. So there is stuff to clean up with his feet. Honestly, I think there's some room to get even more effective play strength in there. I don't think his overall play strength profile is phenomenal, whether you're talking about displacing guys off the line or his anchor in pass protection. I would love to see him bulk up even more. I think he has the frame to do it, but he's more of an athletic looking tackle, as opposed to some of these other guys that are just so wide and hard to get through. I don't think he's got that much play strength in there for what you want to see. So massive potential, certainly a bit of a project, but I would absolutely consider him mid to late first round, 100%. And I really hope that he reaches that potential, because you're going to be talking about a Pro Bowl caliber talent if you can really get to this guy who, again, is still relatively new to football. So very fun prospect there. Let's go to my number 4. Offensive tackle, and this is actually Spencer Fano out of Utah. And I want to be clear, I really like all of these top 4 tackles, but I do find myself feeling like I'm lower on Spencer Fano because I've seen a lot of OT1, a lot of hype. I've seen Rashawn Slater comparisons for him. And I'm not quite there with Fano, but I really like him. I think as a top 20 pick in the draft, it's a very easy sell. I think he's got a very high floor and is going to be a really good either tackle or even potentially a better guard at the next level. But I didn't think it was all perfect with his tape. I had some moments with him where I just liked 3 of these other tackles a little bit better. And I feel like I'm gonna be alone for most people in terms of him being the 4th offensive tackle for me in this draft. But I want to start with the good on him because, again, at the end of the day, I really like Spencer Fano here. Really explosive athlete, very balanced profile. While I'm maybe a tick lower on him overall, I think I'm maybe a little higher on his overall kind of strength profile and anchor. And I think that's where some of the guard stuff comes in. Like, I was expecting this guy to be like frail and getting bowled over by every bull rush he faced based on some of the scouting reports I had seen out there. And it wasn't really the case. Like, I think he's filled out and has plenty of play strength for my liking. I see some of the concerns there, especially in the run game. I don't think he's the most assertive, physically dominant enforcer of an offensive lineman, but I think it's all very functional. But you definitely see the athleticism show up in the pass sets, the ability to move out in space. This guy ran a 4.91 40-yard dash, 32-inch vertical jump. He also has the second best shuttle time of the 24 offensive tackles that I have written down their testing numbers on. The one guy above him is Francis Maui-Noa, who we haven't discussed yet on this list. And those testing numbers show on tape and the way that he moves. I think, again, he has plenty of athleticism to be left on an island as a tackle. I think the technique across the board, especially in pass protection, is pretty damn good. I think he pairs that athletic ability with good reaction time with his feet, plenty of range in pass protection. I think he re-anchors really well when he does get any initial knockback against the bull rush. He shows some really good, workable early signs of excellent hand usage. And then he does flash a really effective bait technique, which is something that any shorter arm tackle is going to want to perfect. I mean, that is, if you want to say the best case scenario for him is Rashawn Slater, like, I thought Slater's hand usage coming out of Northwestern was like NFL Pro Bowl level, like damn near perfection. I don't see the same thing with Spencer Fano quite yet, but the flashes are in there. And if you're going to have 32 and a quarter, 32 and 3/4, whatever the actual arm length is on Spencer Fano, because depending where you look, it's a little different. I just met it in the middle at 32.5-inch arms. And it does impact his game when you watch his tape more than some other guys like a Rashawn Slater coming out. But if you're going to succeed with that shorter arm length, it's not going to be because you're constantly sticking those hands inside and you've got that length advantage. It's because you have the craft to vary those hand strikes, keep edge rushers guessing, and in many cases use that ghost or bait and switch technique where you fire your shot, you get the opponent to, try to either swipe at your arms or fire the bull rush back inside, get them to show their move, and then you quickly pull their hands back, wait till they whiff at air, and then they're off guard. Boom, then you can stick those hands. There's ways to compensate for shorter arm length that guys like Zach Tom, Luke Gedeke, Rashawn Slater have all kind of perfected at the next level. If Spencer Fano's going to stick at tackle, it's really just in flashes when you see great hand usage, because I do see a guy that whiffs wide quite often and a guy whose shorter arms do actually impact his tape a decent amount. And that's probably a good bit of why I ended up with him as my OT4 ahead of some of these or behind some of these other guys. But it's not like there aren't examples of other guys surviving with it as well, right? So that's where I come in on the whole arm length discussion with him. The other thing with Fano's tape that I struggled with, frankly, and I'm curious to see where this lands at the next level, is I don't know quite what to think about him as a run blocker quite yet. And I think it's largely Utah's system's fault. It was a shotgun, RPO-oriented run game where he's almost always in a 2-point stance. And in RPOs, you can't really get upfield and do everything you need to fire off the ball and be the consistent run blocker you want to. And I think it just led to him being a little bit more apprehensive, more inconsistent, if you will, not always in ideal positioning as a run blocker, not just because of the shorter arm length, which again, I do think impacts him in the run game in terms of sticking those hands where they need to be and being in a good position to steer or sustain a block. But also just like not getting the most out of the athletic tools that we know he has. I don't know that Utah allowed him to do that. Now, I didn't go back to watch his 2024 tape, and PFF grades are what they are. Rip PFF, but he had like a 90 run block grade in 2024. It was much lower. I think it was in the 60s this year, and I think that showed on tape. Like the run block stuff was, I'll just say, hit or miss for me from this final year at Utah. So if we ask him to put his hand in the dirt, tap into that athleticism, allow him to play a little bit more nasty as a run blocker, then we can really get excited about him being a fully complete player. Not that he's a bad run blocker. It's just, it was inconsistent, and want to see more from him in that phase because I think he has more in that phase. But at the end of the day, you've got to love the potential flexibility for Fano. I think he could play tackle. I think he could play guard. I think you could even ask him to learn how to snap and play center. I think his physical profile is consistent with a lot of NFL centers. And a lot of times, too, you have a lighter tackle. Like Luke Gedeke was a great example of this. I think a lot of people with Will Campbell fall into this as well. If you're going to take a tackle and slide him into guard, a lot of people just assume that's going to work. In the case of like a Luke Gedeke, it didn't work because Luke Gedeke didn't quite have the core strength and the anchor to go against 320-pound defensive tackles consistently. With Fano, I'm not so worried about that. I know he gets criticized for his play strength a lot. I'm less worried about that with Spencer Fano. And I think at guard, I actually think his game would translate to an even higher potential because that's where arm length isn't going to impact him as negatively as often. So I think he can play tackle. I think he could be an even higher potential guard or even center. But you've got to love that flexibility for him to maybe be any position on your offensive line. And he's even got experience playing left and right on top of all that. So there is a lot to like with Spencer Fano. I think I explained some of the concerns with him, but absolutely top 20 pick consideration and could be an outstanding starter for somebody anywhere along your offensive line. But next up, we have, I think, one of my guys in this draft. Not that he's a complete sleeper or anything like that, but I do think people are sleeping on him to an extent, and that's Blake Miller out of Clemson. Just really good tape, dude. And it's not like he doesn't have traits either, right? He's 6'6". He's got 34.25-inch arms. So if you are into arm length, you're not going to have the same concerns with him as you would with someone like Spencer Fano. He ran a 5.04 40, 32-inch vertical jump, a 9'5" broad jump. Like, this is just amidst all these other like high upside traitsy tackles. He's got the traits. And again, he's got the length. Played at Clemson, 4-year starter. And to me, a lot less to coach up than we're going to be talking about with a lot of these players. Not that there aren't areas for him to improve in, but you want to talk about like textbook footwork for a college prospect. Blake Miller's got it. He's explosive into his kick sets, gets plenty of range, and has excellent feet to slide with pass rushers, to cut off inside counters. I have no questions. This guy's going to be able to survive on an island and match the athleticism of NFL pass rushers, just about all of them, if not all of them. And then from a run blocking perspective, that's where I really fell in love with Blake Miller, dude. Like, he knows what he's doing. All of his experience really shows. He's stronger as a run blocker than I think he gets credit for. I think he converts speed to power with his get off to create really good displacement off the ball. He can block any scheme. Like, Clemson would use him as a weapon in the run game. They would take him as a, in a 6 offensive line package and line him up in the backfield and like have him tee off as a lead blocker. But it shows up wide zone, screen game, whatever. Like, he can block any scheme in the run game. I want to see him get better with his hands because he has the length to be more accurate with his hands. I think in both phases, I want to see him stick his hands inside more often and protect his chest more often as a pass blocker. But in the run game, he can miss with his hands and then get stuck leaning into guys, and he will occasionally fall off blocks in the run game. That's probably his biggest issue as a run blocker, where some of his negative plays come in. But yeah, especially as a pass blocker, if he could just get better with his hands, wow, we're going to be in business with him, because that's where his losses come in, where he misses wide or his chest gets exposed. And I don't think he has the best natural anchor. So if he's already hurting himself with his technique, where he's getting blown up from his chest, and then you get that knockback effect, I think that all ties together. But that's really the one area that you can focus on with him, where you could take him from an already very good player to become an outstanding NFL player. So I think the tape is really good. I think the upside with him is sold short at times because he's like prospect fatigue. He's been around a little bit longer. He's a 4th-year player that didn't come out as a true junior like the other top 4 tackles did or are right now. So I don't know, but all I know is I really like Blake Miller. I think he's right in the mix with these guys, and I'm absolutely considering him inside the top 20 of the draft as a true first-round talent. And my OT3, which I don't know how many people have Blake Miller OT3, even if it's just a smidge above Spencer Fano. And then we have another polarizing tackle prospect here. It's Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. And I get why he's polarizing. Because, number one, the traits are insane. He's over 6'7", 315 pounds. He's got almost 35-inch arms. How broad this guy is, the sheer width of him, paired with the fact that he's an outstanding athlete, ran a 4.93 40, 33.5-inch vertical jump. Just the idea of trying to get around this guy, I think a lot of times I'm not going to say I'm guilty of it because I think it all matters, but at the root of everything, if you're trying to rush the passer against one of these guys, it reaches a point where a guy is just so long and so athletic, even if his technique can fail him at times, his recovery ability is insane, and just the sheer width and range of the wall that you have to move around to get after the quarterback, to get past this guy, it's a challenge, man. And I will say on top of that, a lot of these 6'7" tackles, their anchor can be a problem because you can be upright. You might struggle to protect your chest, and then you get that knockback effect. I didn't see that with Monroe Freeling. So that gets me really freaking excited. I think that point right there is why I felt comfortable with him as my OT2, because there's a lot of stuff to clean up with him that I will talk about. But if he's so hard to get around, and I don't think SEC pass rushers had a fun time trying to go through him, that floor, even if there are polarizing aspects to his game and there's a lot still to develop for him, I still think his floor as a pass blocker is still quite high. Now, there are still moments where, especially against inside counters, where it's not that he doesn't have the agility to cut those things off. I don't think his foot speed is outstanding, but it's good enough to cut off inside counters against NFL competition. I think it's more of a technique thing for him, where he is slow. Honestly, in a lot of aspects of his game awareness has a lot of moments on his tape where you just kind of scratch your head and you're like, we're going to have to clean that up. We're going to have to clean that up. We're going to have to clean that up. And one of those is he's got to be faster at recognizing inside counters so that he can get his feet to move inside and cut those off. Because if you can force him to set wide, you can then work back inside and get through him that way. So that's the one area of pass protection where he really has a long way to go. I will say his handwork is pretty damn good for someone that's quote unquote raw. I think he's accurate with his hands. He's got different techniques that he'll mix in. He's got the snatch trap in there, which is really nice for him when he breaks that out. So I love the pass blocking for him. The run blocking is where it's really interesting with him, because I think there's tremendous potential for him to be a high-end run blocker at the next level, but the tape just isn't very good as a run blocker. There's no other way to put it. You see the athleticism, and you see when things connect for him, that's where you get really excited, because you're like, dude, if we can get that consistently, I mean, this is Mike McGlinchey, Brian O'Neill type of territory. But the problem is the feet. Like, he's got to get better at moving his feet, because I know he physically can. I think it's just he stops his feet. He engages with blocks and then just, I don't want to say gives up on him, but he just doesn't stay square. He doesn't run his feet through blocks enough. And the amount of times that defenders just fold off of the block or fall off of the block or he falls off of the block, it's way too much, man. And I didn't think he had the confidence and demeanor as a run blocker either that really any of these top four guys had. I think that's really where you see he just doesn't quite get it in the run game quite yet. And I don't know if that will come along or not. And that it would suck if he just is never that good of a run blocker at the next level, especially because you know the potential is there for him to be something like a Brian O'Neill or Christian Darrisaw or, you know, these crazy athletes at the tackle position that are in the NFL. But I do feel pretty good about the pass blocking outlook for him. I guess if there's one further holdup with the pass blocking stuff is inside Georgia's offense, he doesn't have a ton of experience as a pass blocker. He's only a 2-year starter, and their offense, I think they had 95 true drop back sets this year. Like, there's a lot more reps than he needs to accrue. And I think that especially shows up with like the lack of processing of inside counters. He just hasn't faced that many inside counters in the true drop back pass game. So it's just a lack of experience there, but it's not that he wasn't super efficient when, you know, he was in those true pass block sets. Only gave up 4 pressures in 95 true pass blocking sets per PFF in his final year here. So I feel like I am a little bit higher on Monroe Freeling. I'm willing to take that leap of faith with him. He's still very young. They're just kind of mental glitches with him. I think a lot of his stuff is coachable as you project him to the next level. And a lot of his issues come too with just like an inexperienced guy with like poor blocker awareness moments and like, assignment discipline issues where you'll see him let a guy cross his face or he'll climb to the next level and he doesn't quite have the targeting system that you want to see from a guy as a move blocker. But I think it all just stems from experience and confidence, and maybe I'm willing to take a little bit more of a leap of faith with him in that regard. But it's not that it doesn't hold him back or that he doesn't need to get better at it either. So I don't want to say he's perfect or bust proof or anything like that. I think the floor with the pass protection probably makes him like somewhat bust proof. Like, I just don't think he's ever going to suck as a pass blocker, but it would be, in a sense, a bust if he was just like a pretty decent, low-end starter. Like, you want him to be much more than that, where you kind of have to draft him and would draft him this year as a top 20 pick. But I did find myself liking Monroe Freeling. And then my number 1, offensive tackle, Francis Maui-Noa, out of Miami. And he was not really what I went in expecting. I was expecting, at 6'5", 330 pounds, I was expecting him to be more of a mauler that maybe wasn't a great mover. Like, I guess I was expecting maybe more like a Darnell Wright or a Talize Fuanga. And that's not the experience I had watching Maui-Noa. But it still ended up being a player I really like. Obviously, he's my OT1 and a lot of people's OT1. But, dude, this guy, I mean, he probably doesn't get enough credit for how agile and athletic he is at 330 pounds. I wouldn't say he's quite as explosive as, like, Max Ihanichor. But in terms of, like, a fluid mover at that size, it's pretty special. And he is also, like, we've been talking about him for so long. I think he also maybe doesn't get the same credit for being so young and still so much runway for him to develop some of these little minor flaws that he has in his game. But on the flip side of all this, I actually didn't think he was as strong as I went in expecting. I think that's probably where most of his weaknesses, or at least relative lack of strengths in his game, show up. I didn't think he moved guys off the ball all that consistently. I think you can beat him with his anchor. It's still a very good anchor at 330 pounds, but I feel like he plays closer to like what you expect from about a 310, 315 pound offensive lineman, and it's got its pros and cons. Like, he is still 330 pounds. The physics of that are going to show up at times when he gets moving and gets behind his pads as a run blocker. You can see some really good flashes of power. But at the same time, you kind of like, why isn't he stronger? It's kind of strange. And perhaps all that means is he's a young guy that maybe you could get him up to 345 pounds and he still moves really well and is even stronger. Like, I don't think that's insane to suggest with him and his frame. But I think as long as we're going down that path with him, like, yeah, I think his punches are a little bit softer than you expect. He doesn't move guys quite as well. And just the play strength profile it's fine, but not quite what I kind of expected. But the athletic elements of his game were really a pleasant surprise. I think how quick his feet are in pass protection is a huge asset and a big reason why he should be viewed as a tackle first. I think he's a little bit more of a short striding athlete, so he doesn't get amazing range in pass protection. That's probably his biggest weakness in pass pro, is really exploding out of that stance and being able to protect the edge. I think some of the fastest, most explosive, bendiest edge rushers are going to get him, be able to threaten the top of that drop a little bit. And that's where the foot speed and the athleticism shows for him and really helps him, because even if he doesn't necessarily, with proper technique, get to those deep landmarks in his kick sets, he's very fluid to just quickly turn into an athlete and kind of chase you down and run you out. Like if you're gonna try to just threaten the corner against him, he'll still win his block with untraditional technique by just kind of getting upright and chasing you and running you out of the play. Not everybody can do that as athletically as he can, so it's a good recovery and fallback plan for him. But I think his hand usage is really good in pass pro, cuts off inside counters really well. He's accurate and patient, knows what he's doing with his hands. Again, I think the anchor is perfectly reasonable. Even if he's not impenetrable with his anchor, it's still very good. He's got plenty of sand in his pants there. And I think as a run blocker too, he's very solid, very workable, with room to develop. I want to see him get more accurate with his strikes and a little bit more powerful off the ball somehow. I don't know if that'll ever come along or not. But it's hard for me to just not watch Francis Maui-Noa and say that's the highest floor offensive tackle in this draft. He allowed just 8 pressures in pass pro all season long, with everything we said, being a good enough run blocker that can block any system. Like with wide zone being the modern meta in the NFL, like I have no doubt this guy can get out on the move, block wide zone. I wish he was a little bit better in the inside run game at displacing guys. Again, 330 pounds. Hopefully he can add a little bit more to his game there, but we'll see. Honestly, the only other big knock on him is he was penalized 21 times in his 3-year career, 7 times in 2025. So got to clean up some of that stuff, but I ended up leaning towards the floor in Maui-Noa's game. Even if I think Freeling, Ihanichor, maybe even like Caden Proctor, to a degree, maybe Blake Miller, other guys have higher upside than Maui-Noa, but I would say his floor, the probability of him being a bust or anything worse than just a good, solid offensive lineman is pretty low. And on top of all that, I think he can absolutely play guard for you. And he's talked about the willingness to play guard. That matters as well. His athleticism at his size would absolutely translate as a guard, where his upside is probably close, if not even a little bit better. But I love that flexibility as well. Whereas some of these other guys, Freeling, Miller especially, I'm not really talking about, if they fail, at least he can be a really good guard. In the way that I view with Maui-Noa and maybe Spencer Fano as well. So there's your top 8 tackles. I do want to at least give some shout outs to some guys further down the board. I will remind you, if you want the full write-ups and more, all of the information on not just the guys I'm going to talk about here in this video, but all of the 24 tackles I've watched, the 23 guards I've watched, and still more to come on that list. Check out my Patreon. My draft guide over there is available to you there. But just to give some further love to some other guys in this class and to really show the tier splits that I have on these guys as well. But tier 1 is those top 4 guys. Tier 2 for me is still going to be round 1 consideration after those top 4. And for me, that's Max Ihanichor, Caden Proctor, and Caleb Lomu at the very end of the first round. Lomu's maybe in a 2B tier. But then tier 3 is actually all alone there, just round 2 grade. Carver Willis, again, maybe Caleb Lomu's halfway in between there. But then this tier 4 are guys that I have not talked about yet. And there's a lot of good depth in this tackle class that I wanted to at least give some quick shout outs to some other names here as well. J.C. Davis, Markel Bell, Caleb Tiranen, all guys that I would consider in the 3rd round, especially like potential starters or really good swing tackles, all a little bit different. J.C. Davis is a big mauler, pretty good tape, maybe could be a really good guard as well. Markel Bell, the other Miami tackle, was better than I thought at, like, he's got hilarious length, 6'9", like maybe the biggest wingspan ever measured, I feel like I heard. But trying to get around him in pass protection is really a challenge, and there's a lot of DeJuan Jones there with him, where DeJuan Jones has his ups and downs. He's not the forever starter in Cleveland, but if he has to be a starter, they've survived with him because he is so hard to get around in pass pro and can at least be a really nice backup. And Bell had a little bit of a nasty it factor about him as a run blocker as well. So I ended up liking him more than I thought I would. And then Caleb Tiernan, he's interesting because he's 6'8", super athletic, but really short arms. And normally that's a recipe for disaster, but he did find a way to make it work. He anchors okay at that size. And he's just good at kind of staying in front of guys. I don't know that at that profile he's going to have the craziest upside ever. But for a guy that's that tall, that moves his feet as well as he did, kind of similar to Markel Bell, where it just kind of works to an extent and maybe could carve out a role as a starter there. So those guys. And then you've got Jennings Dunker, who I'm going to talk about as a guard, but he played tackle at Iowa and maybe could do it at the next level. We'll get to him. Trey Zune, really fun player, kind of a slightly diminished version of Carver Willis and everything we talked about with him, where he's got a balanced profile, he's athletic, he's got good technique, and he even took some snaps as a center for Texas A&M. I liked his tape. I think end of the third round, early fourth round for him as a flexible offensive lineman. And then the last guy that I would think about in round 3, but with a third to a fourth round grade, Drew Shelton out of Penn State, a lot of moldable, traits to maybe be a starter down the road. Just inconsistent tape, but not a bad player by any means, and ended up with him in that third to a fourth round range. And then even in, on the draft guide there's, some guys like Nolan Rucci, Austin Barber, Isaiah World's interesting. This is a really deep tackle class that I like. So definitely check out some of those deeper evals there in the draft guide. But let's talk some guards now, shall we? And not just guards, centers as well. These are going to be my interior offensive line rankings. And I'm going to dive into my top 6 here. It's not as deep of a group. And then I'll do the same deal where I'll give you some more names that I'm not spending quite as much time on the guys further down the board. So we'll do top 6 here for interior offensive line. And we're going to start there with a true center prospect in Connor Lew. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Connor Lew because he's a very simple evaluation. 20-year-old guy that honestly, I don't really want to start him right away. I think he's got to get stronger. There's just little glitches with awareness stuff, whether it's, missing a guy at the second level or not seeing blitz pick up. He's just young and not strong enough yet. But that said, he's my number 1 true center in this draft from, the upside. Because from a frame perspective, you can see he's got the wide base that you want for an interior player. And he moves really well with that wide base. So he's really good at squaring up his blocks in both phases, running his feet. The foundations of all that are excellent. And, a lot of these teams are looking for athletic centers that can reach block, that can get on the move and be weapons in the run game. I think Connor Lew, if everything comes along, can be that for you. It just comes down to the fact that he's just not strong enough yet. And maybe a good sign is that he came out to the combine at 310 pounds, where his listed weight was about 303 pounds. So hopefully that's a stretch in the right direction there. But he doesn't really move guys off the ball. His anchor can be challenged in pass pro. And that's it, man. He's just got to get bigger, faster, smarter, stronger. He's 20 years old. He turns 21 right before the season starts. So I like him as a project. There's a reason he's declaring. He's ready to get that NFL coaching and get that thing started at the next level. But ideally, you don't have to play him right away. Otherwise, you're going to deal with some losses, I think, with him, because he had his losses at Auburn. But I do see, for a center prospect, something that's hard to find. But then we'll go to my number 5 guy, and this is actually the only tie. Those that have followed my position rankings are used to seeing even more ties than this, but I do have a tie for my number 4 interior O-line spot, and This is going to be Kalen Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. He's really fun, and he's kind of a hilarious player because the majority of his power comes in his upper half, and then he has this kind of like thin, athletic lower half where he can get out of his stance. He ran a, what was it, a 505 40-yard dash is really good. He had a 32-inch vertical jump, 104-inch broad jump. Like, he can get out and move, and when he connects as a puller or out in space or in the screen game, not only does he have a lot of like moving momentum that is effective as a move blocker, but I mean, this dude, if he gets a linebacker or a safety, he's the definition of playing through the whistle. Like, he is an absolute dickhead. He blocks second-level defenders like they personally insulted his family. And that's just fun to watch, right? So you love that element of him. And just the overall run blocking, it's pretty damn good and effective. I think his overall balance, being a little bit more of a top-heavy build, can work against him at times, where he'll lose his feet, he'll end up on the ground, he'll fall off blocks, he'll lean a little bit. The sustain of his blocks isn't great, but a lot of times it just doesn't matter because he hits you so hard and knocked you out of place that you can't make a play anyway, and the back's already gone. So I think that's probably going to be his style, but I think he's going to be an effective run blocker at the next level. The pass blocking is where I hope he can get better because he's got the traits. It's just that this was a pretty run-heavy offense, and he didn't have a ton of true pass blocking opportunities in a one-on-one sense. And I think that shows in his technique. Like, you'll see him stop his feet at times and get crossed up by athletic finesse-style rushers. I think the combination of like the accuracy and the striking power with his hands and the anchor was challenged a little bit. And with a thinner lower half, I think you will be able to knock him back with the bull rush. But ideally, maybe he could bulk up a little bit in his lower half and improve that natural anchor ability. But ideally, he's got enough explosiveness to be able to have that hop set technique and anchor a little bit better against the bull rush. So that's where you're going to bring some questions into it. Is I think NFL, like good pass rushing NFL D tackles, are going to get their one-on-ones against him and probably make him look silly at times in his rookie season. But you hope that can develop, that the run blocking can be really good, and he brings a nastiness to your offensive line. So he's a fun player. He ended up my, again, 5th ranked interior offensive lineman, and with the same grade as my number 4 here, which is a guy that I think I'm a little bit lower on. I still like him, and we're in 2nd to 3rd round territory, by the way, with all these guys. Connor Lew, because of the rarity of being that true center. Rutledge is a 2nd to a 3rd round grade for me, and then 2nd to a 3rd round grade as well on Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. And he's in many ways the guard version of Connor Lew in this draft for me, but I think he's stronger than Connor Lew is, which is why he comes in higher. But a guy that is young, has some stuff to clean up with his technique and his game awareness, but just I think needs to get stronger. You do love, though, like really athletic guy, good frame, good arm length, almost 34 inches for a guard is really good. Hell, he played a little right tackle at Texas A&M. There might be a little Braden Smith in there where he's a college guard, but maybe he is actually better as a tackle because, like, man, his athletic profile suggests he could probably do it. So it's something to keep an eye on at least, but you're probably keeping him at guard if that's what he did in college. But I think overall, like, he's good at weaponizing that athleticism in the run game. Like, the get off, the wide zone, reach blocking ability is very smooth. It's very natural for him. He runs his feet through contact. He sustains blocks really well when he does connect with those hands. But just doesn't have a ton of oomph to him. A lot of guys can overpower him in both phases, but in the run game, you see guys able to shed blocks off of him at the point of attack. If it's inside zone, like, I don't know how much he's going to be able to drive guys back. And it's unfortunate because, 315 pounds, that's usually enough to have really good play strength on the inside, and I just didn't see it as much with Chase Besantis. So I'm wondering if he has the room to add more play strength, or if he is a little bit more maxed out and he just doesn't quite have it. It's interesting, but I'm not ruling out that he could become a much stronger player at just 21 years old. But again, in pass protection, you see that anchor get challenged as well. When he gets left one-on-one against a good bull rusher, he's going to go backwards a little bit. And then I think on top of that, his feet aren't where they need to be in pass pro yet. You see a lot of just kind of, I don't want to call them lazy losses, but losses where his feet do get lazy, where he has guys cross his face, they'll pull off that Euro step, and he just doesn't quite match that agility to cut off those types of moves. And I think absolutely he has room to improve his technique dealing with those kind of quick-hitting finesse-style rushers, but he's got to get better at that. So there's areas to his game where he must improve, but the athleticism, I think he has a little bit of an it factor to him in terms of the way he moves and how good he looks on his positively graded, like, good reps. You see it all come together, and you're like, we just got to get that more consistently, get him a little bit stronger, and this can be a really good guard at the next level. But look, he had his losses in both phases. There's no way around it. And if he doesn't get better, NFL players are only going to beat him more often, and you're going to end up with just kind of an okay player. So the development's got to come from him. That's why I ended up maybe a tick lower on him. I don't think he's this plug-and-play option that especially our top two guys are, but even this next guy I think could be. But that's where I landed on Chase Besantis, more of a late second, early third round grade for me. But then we have a very fascinating player here because he played tackle in college, but I actually just wrote him up as a guard. That's Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. And I did this with him as opposed to some of the tackles where I was like, he's a tackle, but he could play guard. I think Jennings Dunker was a guard that was asked to play tackle at the next level. And I think he has like really good high end, maybe like Pro Bowl potential as a guard at the next level, where as a tackle, I don't think he has like super high upside because he's not that good of a mover in space. And one thing you'll notice is with these interior offensive linemen, I took off the range evaluation metric for the pass blocking because that's strictly a tackle thing. With Jennings Dunker, I'll put it up there to show you what it would have been if I had him as a tackle. It's a C- range grade. The beauty of kicking a guy inside is you get to delete that from being a requirement for being good at the position. You don't have to have those explosive, deep kick sets to prevent a speed rusher with 4.4 speed, beating you to the corner when you're at guard. And that's really where I worry about Jennings Dunker. He's a stiffer mover and doesn't have those explosive kick sets. And he chases a lot in pass protection. And I just think if you leave him at tackle, that's always going to be something he's dealing with. He does enough with a good anchor and I think pretty damn good hands. And, I think he's a decent short striding athlete. I think his overall agility and the speed in which he can pick up his feet and move them is okay. But getting that depth and climbing backwards was really a problem for him. But he can cut off inside counters and do enough in pass pro in that sense. But that's all stuff that really translates as a guard in pass pro at the next level, especially because he's wide, he's fully built, his anchor's pretty damn good. So could he play tackle and just, if you got to go against really athletic speed rushers, which you're going to see pretty much every other week in the NFL, you got to help him with chip protection. You could survive there. But again, I think he could be an easy plug and play guard. We just don't have the tape from him at guard necessarily. He did it a little bit in his past. I didn't go and watch those games, but I feel pretty damn confident that this thing's going to translate inside for him with how he plays. But then in the run game, he's got really a good projection to the next level and really good tape. I mean, classic Iowa offensive lineman, nasty kind of dickhead mentality, looks to finish blocks. Love that from him. That shows up in pass pro too. Like when he comes in to help, if he's unoccupied, he finds work and he will give guys bruises. He will make guys look forward to their ice bath after the game. And that, as a guard, is going to happen even more often, where he gets left unoccupied and he can go help. He did it at tackle. That'll happen even more at guard. It's another reason for the conversion there. But the tenacity, the dickhead mentality is clear with him. Plays through the whistle, all that good stuff. And he's a very technically sound run blocker. He's not the fastest off the ball. I like him better on inside blocking schemes. He's got enough athletic ability to reach block. It's just not what he's going to be best at. But he's really good in a one-on-one sense of just squaring up off the ball, sticking those hands inside, and then just overwhelming you with grip strength and leg drive. A lot of these guys are great run blockers because they fly off the ball and knock you backwards, get you unbalanced, and then they're able to kind of get you out of the way. It's kind of the opposite with Jennings Dunker. He's more of like a slow burn where he gets in your face and then makes you feel his presence. But it's probably a more, sustainable ability to sustain blocks, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But the only reason he's not higher is because he is more of a projection as largely a college tackle making that move inside. But I feel very confident in that ability, enough so that I was willing to put him ahead of a really good prospect, a really good guard prospect in Chase Besantis as a guard. But then we have Emmanuel Pregnon as my number 2 interior offensive lineman. Really nice player, man. And he's older. He's a 6-year player, 24 years old, more or less, coming out. I don't think I saw an official birthday on him, but you're expecting pretty damn clean tape and a confident overall player with good traits if they're going to come out at this age, someone that's pretty plug and play. And that's what you're getting in Emmanuel Pregnon. Really balanced size profile, 6'4", 314 pounds, 33.5-inch arms. Athletically speaking, he tested a lot worse than I was expecting. He ran a 5.21, but that doesn't show on tape. He's a really easy mover on tape, and I think that was reflected 35-inch vertical jump and a 9-foot 3-inch broad jump. That's really good explosive numbers for him, and that makes sense. I think the way he gets out of his stance is more than athletic enough to reach block for wide zone systems, to climb to the second level. He's a very fluid athlete, even if the long speed might have its limits. Like, if you really need to pull him and get him out in space in front of a speed back, maybe he's going to have less range than someone like Chase Besantis, but I don't think it's very often that that's really going to impact his game. And I think he even shows better speed on tape than the 5.21. So I'm really not worried about the poor 40 time for him, but excellent run blocker, really across the board, dude. He's got really good play strength. He's a pound lighter than Chase Besantis, and those guys get compared a lot as kind of early second round types of guard prospects. Emmanuel Pregnon's play strength is just so much better. Just on the tape, it just is. And maybe it's his old man strength at 24 years old versus 21-year-old, and that's totally fair, but it is there with Pregnon. His ability to displace guys off the line with, again, a really good first step, really good get off to get on top of guys quickly, knock them back, good hands, runs his feet, sustains blocks really well. He's one of the best run blockers in this class, straight up, at tackle or guard. And I feel very confident that that's going to translate to the next level. The pass blocking is all really good, other than he misses with his hands too much. And even when he does connect, for some reason, those punches in pass pro can be a little bit softer. So I don't know if that's just a deficiency for him at this point. He just doesn't quite have the great, strong, accurate hands, and maybe that limits his upside as a pass blocker a little bit. But he's got really good feet. Again, very fluid athlete. When he does connect, he can mirror really well with you, or just to stay square, to stay in front of you. Not going to lose to a ton of like quick hitting, pass rushing moves and stuff. Like, again, better athlete than he tested. That shows in pass pro, and he's got a good anchor as well. Like the play strength side of things for him really was rarely brought into question for me with him. It's just checks a lot of boxes, man. Really good player. He, to me, feels like an even better version of what we talked about with like Donovan Jackson last year. I actually like Pregnon a little bit better, but the same idea where it's like, you know what you're getting? High floor guard. And the Vikings ended up talking themselves into him at the end of the first round because it was such a need. And he was kind of as advertised as a pretty damn solid player. Maybe not the traitsiest guy, maybe never going to be a superstar in the league. But look, if you're the Chargers or you're the Seahawks at the end of the first round, and you want to cement that guard spot with a really good player, I see that in Emmanuel Pregnon. And then we have the number one interior offensive lineman and my highest rated offensive lineman in this draft, Vega Ioane, out of Penn State. Is not a lot to say other than he's just really freaking good and complete as an overall prospect. If there's a knock, it's like, he's a good, not great athlete. And like, maybe you could say he's got great play strength, but not elite play strength in terms of like when he punches guys and steers guys in the run game. He clearly has like really good, great NFL play strength. Maybe he's not Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson. Like, that's your creme de la creme of like guard prospects. If you're talking athleticism and play strength, pairing that all together, falls short of that. But beyond that, I really don't have weaknesses on this guy other than the traits just not being elite. Even if I said his play strength isn't that top shelf, absolutely displaces guys off the ball, can absolutely redirect guys when he connects and steer them out of the way in the run game. Even if I said he's not a tremendous athlete, he has plenty of athleticism to reach block, to climb to the second level, to get out in space as a screen blocker, to block any system. As a pass blocker, he was effectively locked down. He allowed just 4 pressures all year, and 0 of which came in true pass rush situations per PFF. So he stays square. He's got outstanding hands. He's got a great anchor. He's one of my higher rated players in this draft. I published my top 50 big board earlier in the week, and he's number 10. He cracks the top 10 of my big board as of this recording. He's outstanding. I think he's a guard. I think you keep him at guard. Maybe he could play center, but you kind of keep him locked in at that one position, and feel damn good when you send that pick in. So whoever it is, whether it's the Dolphins at 11, the Cowboys at 14, hell, I think if you're the Giants at 5, like, why the hell not think about Vega Ioane? So many of these teams could use a player of this caliber at this position. So I'm really a big fan, as with, I think, just about everybody else. Now, just like I wrap things up with the tackle rankings, I want to give you those tier splits both with the guard and with centers, because there's teams that really are looking for true centers. But if I'm looking for a guard, this is how things break down for me. And I kind of filtered in those tackles that could play guard and where they kind of land in these tiers. So Vega Ioane, obviously at the top of your tier 1. This is like easy round 1 consideration for if you're looking for a guard. And then the other 2 names in there for easy round 1 consideration in the top tier is Francis Mauigoa, like we talked about, I think could absolutely be a really good guard. And Spencer Fano, I think could really be a good guard as well. Then you have tier 2. This is more late round 1 consideration. I do have Emmanuel Pregnon in there, as we broke down, comparing him to, at least in terms of potential draft status, to like Donovan Jackson, where you kind of talk yourself into wanting to spend that pick on a guard at the end of the first round. But Caden Proctor as well. If you just wanted to draft him and stick him at guard, I'm not going to hate anybody that wants to do that. I think he's got a really good outlook as a potential guard as well. Then for round 2, specifically at guard, it's those guys we talked about, Jennings Dunker, Chase Bisontis, and Kalen Rutledge. Connor Liu, of course, being a true center prospect. And then there's a crop of round 3 guys as well. This is where we're giving some other guys some love here in this video. But I have Jalen Farmer is a really interesting guy out of Kentucky. A little more boom or bust. His tape is extremely frustrating at times and super inconsistent. But, dude, if you put together his 15 best plays, you're like, dude, that's Trey Smith. That's like Tyler Smith from the Cowboys. Like, his ability to get off the ball, the strength. Like, when things are working for Jalen Farmer, it's really fun to see. It's just things just randomly stop working at random times in both phases. But he's got a lot of potential out of Kentucky there. Another kind of my guy that I haven't heard a single person say this name or mention him, but I thought the tape was really good as especially just a pure pass blocker, is Fabeki Nwaiwu out of Oklahoma. Not a great athlete, not a great run blocker, but was just like lockdown in pass pro. Great anchor, great hands, good enough feet. Really liked what we saw there. So if your quarterback's in trouble and you just want a good pass blocker, I think end of the 3rd round, you could sell me on his tape. And then the other guy is Billy Schrouth out of Notre Dame. Balanced profile, but checked a lot of boxes. And another guard worth a shout out as like a late 3rd, early 4th round guy. And then some of the other tackles that I think have guard potential, Carver Willis, who we talked about. Probably not taking him round 2 to play guard for me, but I really think his game would translate. So end of round 3, early round 4 for Carver Willis. J.C. Davis, who I mentioned out of Illinois, big mauler, maybe will be better as a guard. In fact, he reminds me a good bit of Anthony Belton. I don't think he's quite as strong as Anthony Belton, but Belton went in the 2nd round of Green Bay last year. I had a 3rd round grade on him, and he's going to be probably starting at guard for Green Bay this year. So J.C. Davis is that name right there. And then Trey Zune, who we talked about as a tackle, could absolutely play guard as well. So there's some decent options there, I think, right around round 3, early round 4. And then for the centers, less names to talk about here. For me, I've heard it's a good center class. I didn't see it that way, to be honest. I was pretty underwhelmed by most of the true centers in this draft, especially further down the board. Maybe guys like Jake Slaughter or Brockmeyer out of Miami, Parker Brailsford out of Alabama. I didn't think those guys had a ton to get excited about, but there's still some options here. We talked about Connor Liu as more of a developmental day 2 consideration type of guy. And then if you're late day 2, early day 3, there's a couple guys that I think could be starters for you. Trey Zune is another one that we have talked about at this point, but really solid tape at Texas A&M with positional flexibility. And then you got Sam Hecht out of Kansas State. I thought he was a pretty balanced player, knew what he was doing, but just not really a physically dominant player. I don't know that he's ever going to be like a forever center for you. And he's a 5th-year player, so like I think he's pretty maxed out with his frame and everything, but he's got a, pretty nice baseline if you're in a desperate situation at center where maybe he could plug in for you and be okay. Then we have guys that I'm not really thinking about on day 2 of the draft, but maybe early day 3. Yager Burton out of Kentucky. A lot of people are going to like him because he ran a 4.94 and he's this wide, like full-size center. I didn't think he was that strong, and while he ran a good 40, I thought his feet were pretty slow and he struggled to stay square in pass pro, and when he would get to the 2nd level, a lot of like linebackers and safeties just outmaneuvered him a lot. And that's pretty important at center, to be able to get to that 2nd level and have those impact blocks at the 2nd level. He really underwhelmed me there. And again, he looks big, but he didn't play as strong
as I expected. So he's more of a fourth-round guy for me. Jagger Burton out of Kentucky. And then Logan Jones out of Iowa. This is your classic Iowa center. He's not Tyler Linderbaum, but he's undersized. He's athletic. He's a great wide zone blocker. He's smart. Just not all that strong. But if you're a wide zone blocking scheme and you don't have a center, or I think of like maybe San Francisco where what's his name at center is like 32 years old and eventually you want to get younger and cheaper at that position. Like I think Logan Jones can be something like a Garrett Bradbury's been as like a high floor option at center. Maybe the Bears as a long-term replacement to Garrett Bradbury or a long-term Band-Aid behind Bradbury until they can maybe find their next Pro Bowl caliber center after Drew Dahlman hung it up early on him. And then I wrote down some of the other names that like maybe if you got creative, you could think about them as a center. Like I'm not projecting them to do it, but Vega Ioane, I think, could technically do it if you wanted to go that route. Spencer Fano, I think it's a thought. I'll just say that. Emmanuel Pregnon, sure, why not? I think could handle it. Carver Willis, again, one of my dudes in this draft, I think could absolutely be on your list of teaching him how to snap and play some center. And then Billy Schrouth out of Notre Dame, I could see making that move to center as well. Those are all, again, if you wanted to get a little bit more out of the box to find a center. Obviously, those guys are different calibers with Vega Ioane at the top and Billy Schrouth at the bottom of it, but just some other names I wanted to throw into the mix as maybe centers for this draft. But that's all I got. Again, guys, if you want opinions and grades and analysis on 46 offensive linemen, almost 200 total players, check out the draft guide on my Patreon. If not that, please do hit that like button on the way out here. Subscribe to the channel. We still have to do tight ends, linebackers, corners, safeties, and maybe I'll get to quarterbacks, but that will be the last position I do because this draft there's only so many quarterbacks to talk about, and we've already kind of talked about the two guys worth talking about. But anyway, make sure you subscribe for all of those position rankings, mock drafts, live stream for the draft, you name it. If you enjoy the content, make sure you are subscribed. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you for watching. Drop your comments down below. Where do you think I'm right? Where do you think I'm wrong? What are your rankings for this draft? Let's hear it all in the comments down below. But until the next draft video, thank you for watching and cheers.